Welcome back, welcome back. My next guest has sold a remarkable 35 million records. He's got 4 Grammy Awards, a fan base all around the world, and he's currently on tour. A tour which is set to last, wait for it, 2 years. Well, there aren't many stars who can fill that many venues that many times, but Lenny Kravitz is clearly one of them. I met up with him in London, where he was just about to take to the stage. Well, Lenny, it's great to have you with us.
It is a pleasure to be here.
Welcome back to London.
Thank you, thank you.
Tell me, your new album, Black and White America, was going to be called something else, right?
Well, I was actually working on another album at the time, and I went into the studio, and I was finishing this thing that I thought I was working on, and I started writing new material, and it didn't match the vibe of what I was doing, or what I thought I was doing. And then these songs kept coming and coming, and at that point, you have a choice. You do what you thought you were going to do, or you follow the inspiration. So I followed the inspiration and began writing this album that turned into Black and White America. And sometimes, you know, you feel something and it has to come out.
You think this album, the new album, the latest album, is in fact probably the best work you've ever done, do you think?
I think so. I think so. And I think it has a lot to do with where I am as a person as well. Because in that 2 years on and off that I spent in the Bahamas recording the album, I found a great deal of peace. And in finding that peace, it really helped me to accept a lot of things about myself, my life, forgive, accept, and so forth. And so it was a really magical time for me.
Were you aware of the biracial situation and what your father and mother might be going through and the way they were treated? Or did you that really only come later?
Pre-first grade, so up until 6 years old, I didn't know anything about color, race, anything. There were people in my house that were of every color. You know, I had my Jewish grandparents that lived in Sheepshead Bay. I had my Bahamian and African-American grandparents lived in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. We were all together. My parents were, you know, my mother was an actress, my father a journalist. A lot of their friends were very progressive. The house was full of every color you could imagine. So I just accepted the fact that people look different, and that's life. When I went to first grade, my parents walked me to school. So on the Upper East Side at the time, on 81st and Madison, PS6. And we walked into school, and my parents were the only ones that didn't match. And this boy ran up to me in the hallway, and he pointed his finger and yelled at the three of us and said, "Your father's white." And that was the first time that something hit me. Like, what is that? What do you mean? It threw me off. I didn't understand what that was about. I spoke to my mother. She explained to me, you know, you're just as much one as the other. Be proud of both sides of your heritage. But the thing that was really interesting is that she said, society will only see you as black, though. And this is to a 6-year-old.
Yeah.
I don't know how much of it I got at the time. No. I think, you know, as years went by and I experienced life, I learned to understand what she meant.
And they had to deal with being treated badly in the early, particularly in the early.
Yeah, and even though it was New York City, I mean, it's disgusting, but I remember stories that my father would say, like, he would take my mother to a hotel, say, for dinner or some kind of affair, and they would tell my father no prostitutes allowed in the hotel. People would spit at them on the street. So, I mean, now, this wasn't every day, but this was, you know, this was what
Any
it was like.
Any of that is enough.
Exactly,
yeah.
exactly.
But so do you think in terms, Lenny, of New York and America today, that there's obviously been changes and improvements. Overall, has the position seriously improved, or what?
I mean, of course, it'd be silly to say that things haven't improved, and, you know, I mean, people for all of these years since the civil rights movement, I mean, well, before that, but I'm counting from then on, you know, people have died, sacrificed, you know, fought for the cause.
Yeah.
And things have greatly improved, of course.
Yes.
We have an African-American president, you know, et cetera, et cetera.
In terms of your career, in terms of your career building through 9 albums up to Black and White in America and so on, presumably race hasn't been such a factor in show business and so on as it would be in normal home life, as it were.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the racism showed its ways in sort of smaller, interesting ways, like when I showed up to the record label, and first of all, Lenny Kravitz, they're not expecting me to walk in.
No, no.
And I was playing music that is primarily rock and roll based, which, you know, the myth out there is that rock and roll is white music, which we know obviously where that came from. But they would say, well, you can't make this kind of music. You need to make R&B, or hip hop at the time was you know, exploding. You can't make that kind of music. So in those kind of ways, they would basically be saying, you're black, do what a black musician is supposed to do.
And also, you became, I don't know whether it was a result of the lifestyle as well as everything else, I mean, you became incredibly versatile, didn't you? I mean, take this album. I read that you recorded all the parts, as it were.
Yeah.
Every instrument.
I love playing instruments, and I grew up learning how to play different instruments. I was always interested in playing a lot of instruments, not just one.
So what did you play on this album?
Guitar, you know, bass, drums, you know, keyboards of all sorts, percussion, singing, lead, the backgrounds, the orchestrations. It's a lot of fun. Yeah. It's like painting. I really see it as painting.
Yeah. It's a fantastic versatility to have, though, isn't it?
Thank you.
And there are other things that your music features a lot about your life. For instance, there was the police incident where you were falsely arrested. Was that?
You heard about that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you did a song about it.
Yeah, the song.
What happened?
Bank Robber Man. Yeah. Well,
Bank Robber Man.
I was living in Miami at the time, and I was jogging in just a t-shirt and sweats, and there was a bank robbery a few blocks away, and the suspect was an African-American man in a t-shirt. So there I was within maybe 3 blocks of the bank. So I was the guy. So they put me against the fence, a lot of cars, guns, the whole thing, and thank God the bank teller could tell the difference when she came to identify me.
Oh, God, yeah. That's terrifying. Is that your ambition, to just go on finding new things to do in music?
Yeah, I love being creative, and I look at this first 20 years that I've had, 22 years of my career, as a great education, and I feel like the next 20 years are going to be even better. I'm really looking to expand. I've been doing some movies now, which I'm enjoying. I have a design firm. I do interior design.
Yes, that's fascinating. You do that, don't you?
Yes. I have a lot of projects going on right now, so I'm quite busy putting them together.
And what's the song that you've written that's closest to your heart? Because I mean, it could be "Love Ain't Never Been Better Than It Is Now."
Yeah, life ain't never been better than it is now. For this album, most definitely. And when I speak about the peace that I found on that island during the making of this album, that's the morning I woke up, and I felt like something has changed. I'm by myself. I'm on this island. I'm living in this trailer. There's no people around, and I've been here for months and months, and I'm not lonely, and I'm the happiest that I've ever been. I found something, and you know, I had a lot to deal with in the last years.
Yeah.
I lost my mother. I lost my father. I lost my grandmother. I lost my grandfather. Been through a lot of things, and I never had time to really deal with it because I kept moving, just kept working, kept moving, putting it on the back burner. And in that time, I got to deal with a lot of that, as well as just other personal things that one needs to deal with. And so I went to the studio that morning when I woke up, and recorded that song.
You put it down
and
straight away, laid it down straight away.
Just came out, and that really is what this album is about.
Well, we wish you all the luck in the world with this tour and with the latest album.
Thank you so much.
But anyway, it's been a joy.
It's a pleasure
it really
to be with you.
20 years ago, a book was published which was to become the Bible of the oil industry, called The Prize, The Epic Quest for Oil, Money and Power. It was written by industry consultant and guru Daniel Yergin, and it earned him the Pulitzer Prize. And here's the long-awaited follow-up, right here. The Quest, Energy, Security, and the Remaking of the Modern World. As you see, he specializes in long titles. Wow. He's here right now. Dan, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Good to have you with us. Look, taking this phrase, would you say that the quest, that in a sense this phrase of yours here, will enough energy be available to meet the needs of a growing world, and at what cost and with what technologies? That is one way of your phrasing, defining the quest?
Yes, exactly, to make sure that the world has it. If you look at our world economy today, it's a $65 trillion world economy. When we come out of the rut that we're in, perhaps in 20 years, it'll be a $130 trillion world economy. And so it's a big challenge to ensure the energy to keep that economy going.
And obviously, if there's no energy or there's a lack of energy, that's going to be disastrous. But if there's enough energy, are there other problems that could still catch up with us at that point?
Well, sure. I mean, that one of the major questions about oil is not kind of is there enough oil underground, but in fact what happens above ground. Civil war in Libya interrupts supplies. You have other conflicts in the world. You have competition among nations. There are a lot of sort of security questions that surround the availability of energy in the future.
And one of the things you focus on is shale as a form of energy coming from shale. That's already quite big in the United States, isn't it?
Yeah, it's, you know, if you say what's the biggest energy innovation in the last 2 or 3 decades, if you measure it in volume, it's what this revolution that happened in the United States in terms of getting natural gas out of shale rock, which people thought you couldn't do. The economics didn't work, and it took over about 20 years of innovation to get there, but now it's gone from being 2% of U.S. natural gas production to 30%, and it's changed the economics of natural gas and the whole energy world in the United States because it's changed the competition. And what's really interesting now is you start to see it go global, other countries looking to develop that kind of resource, also using that resource to develop oil. So what you've seen in the last couple of years is, of all things, oil production is going up in the United States, not down.
And that's thanks to shale as well. It's shale gas and shale oil.
Yeah, exactly. And applying this technology. And it's one of the things that happens again and again in the energy business when people are getting pessimistic, say the end of the day is here, we're at the end of the road. Technology opens up new frontiers.
And will shale oil, shale gas, ever run out? Or will that be the absolute dream come true, a lasting source?
Well, I think nothing is forever for perpetual, but it does seem it's a very large resource. So now we have a world in which we have major natural gas supplies coming in the form of liquefied natural gas. We also have shale gas, and we suddenly have a more ample view of the availability to use natural gas as an energy resource.
So that you are very much, perhaps more of an optimist than before you first heard about shale oil and shale gas.
Yeah, I wrote this book over 5 years, and really in the middle of it is when it became clear. I knew that shale gas was happening, but you suddenly saw that it achieved its scale. And I think there is actually, that runs through this whole book, despite all the discussion of the risks and everything and what can go wrong, a sense of optimism, and it's optimism about what's been accomplished really over the last couple of centuries in terms of innovation.
With all the problems and things and countries suddenly getting into wars and so on, but in fact, overall, the message of the quest is very positive, isn't it, really?
I think so. I think it's be realistic, be really aware of the risks. There are old risks, there are new risks like cyber warfare and so forth, but that there can be an essential bedrock of confidence if we do the right things and keep our eye on the long term.
And also you emphasize, in addition to human curiosity and so on and so forth, the other thing that we need is efficiency, yeah? Efficiency is a key to this too.
Well, I think so. You know, if we look at the industrial world, it's about twice as energy efficient as it was in the 1970s. If we don't have efficiency, then we also run into a wall. And this is, I think, has to be seen as another great energy resource. It's interesting that the Chinese now have put energy efficiency actually at the top of their energy objectives, because they realize for their own good, for their own practical good, they need to be more efficient in how they use energy, given how fast their demand is growing.
Well, this is fascinating. We must talk some more another day. That's very, very interesting, and that the quest, well, it means the quest may bear fruit.
Well, it will bear fruit, and certainly the quest will continue, and it's got to continue to meet the challenges that are ahead.
Well, keep coming to us and telling us more. Thank you very much indeed. In 2008, Simon Mann was jailed in Equatorial Guinea in West Africa, a country where he had planned to overthrow President Obiang in a military coup. Because Simon Mann was a mercenary, he had to assemble a troop of men and equipment, and he was arrested as he was loading a plane with weapons ready to storm into Equatorial Guinea. Although he was sentenced to 34 years in jail, President Obiang pardoned him after just 15 months. By their very nature, mercenaries lead shady and low-profile lives, but Simon Mann has written a book here about his experiences, and he's here with us now. Simon, welcome.
Thank you.
On the front page of the book, it says, "When I set out to overthrow an African tyrant, I knew I would either make billions or end up getting shot." What were the odds on both of those as you approached it? Were you very confident?
I was confident enough to risk my life and those of others, yeah.
And how much could the whole team who was involved in this, yourself leading it and so on, how many millions could you have got?
Well, there were two aspects to that. One was our direct pay for the job, and then there was the development of the country had that happened thereafter. But I think we were actually contracted, I think, for 20 million for the guys and me.
That was for actually doing the job.
Yes.
And how did it get underway? How did you start to do this venture? How long before you actually were caught?
Yeah, well, I was caught and arrested in Zimbabwe in March 2004, and I had spent the 12 months prior to that working on that job. I was recruited and introduced to somebody here in London who, for legal reasons, I have to call the boss, as I do in the book. And we worked on the project together for a year.
How many ventures like this have you been involved in your eventful life?
None like this, because this was against the heads, if you like, because here we are going against a sovereign state government. My previous two jobs, if you like, one was in the Angolan War from 93 to 96, and the other was in Sierra Leone War, 94 to 97.
In the course of them all, what was the greatest danger? Did you nearly lose your life through this part of the career?
In the early days in Angola, it was high risk, certainly, but nothing as high risk as it turned out as the last job, which nearly cost me my life. Yes,
and talking of lives along the way, how many men or women, but men, have you had to kill in your career?
None directly. I've always been I haven't. Not that I know of, at least. I may have been in an aircraft that released weapons that killed somebody, but I don't know.
Who was it that leaked to the fact of what you were doing? Why were you did people able to work out what you were about to do and then to arrest you? What was the leak? Was it one person, two or three people? When you get a group together, do they all inevitably leak?
Yes, I mean, groups leak. That's inevitable. I mean, even if they are servicemen, security is always a problem. In this case, the fact that we spent a year messing around putting this thing together, we were constantly in a go-stop sequence, and that is not good for security. By the time we went and we were arrested, a lot of people knew what we were doing. And I knew that they knew.
And it really was, your intent was to overthrow President Obiang for the reasons we mentioned earlier on. Did he ever evince any, when he had you in captivity, did he evince fury or hate at what you were about to do to end his rule, or did he for some reason forgive you?
He did forgive me, and while I was in his custody and care in the prison, I never met him. You know, presidents don't like to come and mingle with their prisoners. But I have met him subsequently, because he invited me back to the country, and I took the opportunity to go and see him and thank him for my pardon.
Why did it happen? You must have been stunned. Were you stunned when you were released?
Yes, I was very stunned. They had said to me, there was never a deal in Equatorial Guinea, but they had said to me from the beginning, you know, if you help us, then we will try to help you, and the president will do something for you, we're sure. I mean, that was all it was. And in my interrogation, which was meant to run for 3 weeks, but in fact went for 3 months, I did my best to, you know, show them, prove to them that by then I was on their side, and that was what got me out.
Did you, when you got the sentence and before you got any vibes of anything good that might happen during that more than a year, I mean, what was your instant reaction? Was it, did you really fear you would be there for 34 years, or that you would indeed possibly be killed while in captivity? It must have been a bleak day.
It was a very bleak day indeed, and I did have to kind of try and program myself, try and, you know, screw down the top of my bottle, so to speak, and say, well, you know, you may actually be here for 34 years. It's not impossible. But equally, I feared he might keep me for 5, or he might keep me for 10, you know. Yeah. By that stage, I'd already done 5 years, nearly 5 years in prison, and I was tired of it.
Yeah, understandably. God. And if people come to you, or if you're flying into some country, what do you put, today, what do you put as your occupation? Do you put mercenary? Are you still a mercenary?
Author, I put now.
Author, yes, you can. Yeah. But no, are you still a mercenary?
No, I'm not, no.
When did you decide to retire?
Well, I think I got pretty much retired when I got arrested, because really, I mean, now I'm very nearly 60 for one thing, and you know, I think that's the end of my career as an active mercenary.
And to young people watching this program, would you say don't be a mercenary if you're tempted to, or would you say it's a great life?
Don't try it at home, I would say. Yeah. And I would say, well, if you are going to try any kind of adventure of that sort, of a mercenary nature, however good the money is, just make sure that the morality is okay. Because, I mean, you can be a mercenary and you can do things which are, you know, are okay. They're relatively good. There isn't a moral problem with them. And you do want to make sure your moral compass is working.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
For being with us, Simon. And that's all, I'm afraid, for this week. Join me again in 7 days' time, if you will, for another Frost Over the World. Goodbye for now.